In 1966, under the directive of President Charles de Gaulle, France withdrew from NATO 17 years after its founding in protest of America's expansionism. That year, General De Gaulle sent a letter to US President Lyndon Johnson requesting that, in light of France's withdrawal from NATO's command structure, the US and Canada remove their military forces from French soil as soon as possible. However, France never officially left the organization and remained a founding and powerful nuclear member of the Atlantic Military Alliance, albeit on the sidelines. From 1949 to 1952, France served in NATO's headquarters until it was relocated to Brussels in 1952. At that time, there were 29,000 American soldiers stationed in France, with a total of 80,000 American family members living there. The departure of American and Canadian troops and their families in 1966 came at a cost for France, leaving around 30,000 people unemployed, 17,000 of whom worked on American bases. On October 28, 1966, in a press conference, General De Gaulle stated that French troops would remain stationed as NATO bases in Germany, but it was unclear whether they would participate in any military conflict between NATO and its rival, the Warsaw Pact. With this announcement, Charles de Gaulle essentially wanted to signal to his European allies that any potential conflict would be between the interests of the US and its rival at the time, the Soviet Union. He questioned why Europe should be dragged into yet another war. From that year until 1995, despite the rise of right-wing governments in France, relations with NATO never fully normalized, and France was known as the organization's dissenting member. During this period, the idea that NATO, with its strong American influence, could curb France's traditional ambitions was nothing more than an illusion. Paris, since the era of General de Gaulle, has consistently sought to maintain its stature as a military power in Western Europe. France's participation in NATO's command meetings after 1995 indicated that the country had decided to reassess its previous positions. That year, for the first time, François Lothar, the French Minister of Defense at the time, along with senior military commanders from France, attended NATO's command meeting, which led to improved relations between France and NATO's American leadership. The next step in this relationship came in 2004 when French General Jean-Louis Paye took command of NATO forces in Afghanistan. 2 years later, when Sarkozy came to power and introduced his reform agenda across various political, social, and economic areas in France, he also approached the country's relationship with NATO with a fresh perspective. One of the hallmarks of Nicolas Sarkozy's era was the fading of France's traditional stance, particularly regarding its interactions with NATO. However, the contradiction between strengthening European defense and returning to a NATO under American command has always been a point of contention among critics of Nicolas Sarkozy's policies. Traditionally, there has been a view in France that an independent European defense should stand apart from American military power, which the US considers an effective tool under its supervision and leadership. During the presidency of Nicolas Sarkozy, the closeness of the Allies' policies to the White House under George W. Bush caused quite a stir, to the point where it seemed that this shift could potentially disrupt France's traditional military diplomacy and become a headache for Sarkozy. However, he simultaneously portrayed himself as pursuing the dream of independent European defense. During his presidency of the European Union, Sarkozy also presented strengthening European defense as one of his priorities. But aside from sending more troops to Afghanistan in support of NATO, he took little action in this regard. Despite aligning closely with US military objectives, Sarkozy expressed concern over France's withdrawal from NATO's command structure in 1966, which had led to its isolation and he advocated for France's active return to this defense alliance. Sarkozy believed that Europe could remain united defensively while also renewing and strengthening its transatlantic ties within a united family. He stated, "I believe that Europe, with France and its core, can play an effective role in global security, avoiding the clash of civilizations that some ignorant and barbaric forces in the world are trying to lead us toward." A look at the French military organization in recent years show that this country is living in a period of military transition, in such a way that is between maintaining the past situation and the future approach of becoming a small but dynamic and capable group. In this context, the key to the latest evolution of France's relations with the NATO was struck when Sarkozy, during his visit to Romania last year in Bucharest, the capital of this country, announced that France is again ready to enter the NATO Command Assembly and is ready to deploy its military forces. For the purposes of this, the organization should be placed at the disposal of the command. Speaker of the French National Assembly, Bernard Lepoy, supported Sarkozy's plan to reform France's relations with NATO and called it a double-edged decision in response to the opposition. He believed that, just as De Gaulle acted according to the needs of the time, today Sarkozy according to the requirements of the times and in accordance with the current conditions of the world and the threat ahead, is trying to restore the past relations with NATO. The senior right-wing official of the legislature has emphasized that the situation today has nothing to do with the situation 50 years ago, and some conditions of that day require that France withdraw from NATO that day based on the decision of the country's leader. But today the situation is completely different. The Cold War, it is finished, and NATO is not considered as a tool in the hands of America, but as a useful tool in the hands of the United Nations and the Security Council. With the same reasoning, the Speaker of the Parliament has asked the left-wing representatives of the Parliament to wisely vote for Sarkozy's military plans, so that France can deploy troops outside the country borders in case of urgent need, or request a vote by submitting a resolution to the Security Council.